Hello, good day and welcome to today's topic. Today we will be talking about the basic economic principles and the economic environment. In this particular module, we will be informed on the economic environment and the different key terminologies used in economics. Additionally, it will provide a discussion on the different types of competition and their definition. This forms part of the series of recordings for the subject engineering economy. Our objectives for the day will be two. The first objective will be to understand and provide basic knowledge on the concepts, classification, and types of competition that are used in the world of finance and banking. To know the basic terminologies used in economics will be the second and final objective. Let us start by defining engineering economy. Engineering economy is the analysis and evaluation of the factors that will affect the economic success of engineering projects to the end that a recommendation can be made which will ensure the best use of the capital. Take note that the word used in here is ensure. Okay? Ang pagkakaiba ng ensure and ensure, okay, well, they are interchangeable, okay? But, okay, when we define ensure or differentiate it from ensure, ensure means, okay, to in a simple sense, ensure means to buy or to provide financial protection. Okay, typically this is with the use of an insurance policy. Okay, and ensure, okay, on the other hand, means to make certain, no, to make sure that something happens. Okay, so the word used in here is ensure. Okay, with the I. This would mean, okay, that we would be concerned, okay, with how we can protect, no, or we can conserve our capital. Okay, ang pinaka goal natin, okay, tandaan natin is ma-preserve yung ating capital at mapalago ito, okay, at mapalaki yung ating businesses. Okay, so in studying engineering economy, okay, yung meron tayong dalawang goods and services na pag-uusapan dyan, okay? So when we say dalawang goods and services, we have the first one, we have consumer goods and services, okay? Which are those products or services that are directly used by people to satisfy their wants. At yung ikalawa naman natin ay yung producer goods and services, okay? On the other hand, these are used to produce consumer goods and services or other producer goods. Okay, so it may be, okay, that the consumer goods are also producer goods. Okay, this will depend, of course, on the context. So, paano ba natin ma-classify na consumer goods and services ito, no? So, kung titingnan natin, no, pwede nating sabihin na yung, for example, yung mga pagkain nating kino-consume, ito ay yung mga consumer goods and services na matatawag natin. Okay? So, if magbibigay tayo ng example per se, okay, consumer goods. Okay? So, consumer goods ang pag-uusapan. Let's say, say fried chicken. No? Okay? Fried chicken is a consumer goods because this is directly consumed, okay, by people to satisfy their wants. Ano ba yung wants natin, no? Or ano ba yung sinasatisfy nitong fried chicken, ano? Sinasatisfy nito yung hunger natin, okay? Yeah, ano pa yung ibang pwedeng sabihin natin consumer goods? Pwedeng clothing, ano? Pwedeng clothing, okay? Pwede ring, let's say, electronics, cellphone, okay? Okay. So, ang konteksto lang nito, sabi ko nga, pwede siyang maging producer goods, pwede siyang maging consumer goods. Depende lang sa kung paano natin siya interpret. Papaano nagiging producer goods and services itong mga to, no? Kung gagamitin sila para makapag-produce ng panibagong produkto, no? So, himayin natin, ano? Kung sasabihin natin na yung fried chicken, yun yung consumer goods, okay? So ano ba yung mga kinailangan na ingredient, no, para maging siyang fried chicken? Ano, kasi yun yung mga tatawagin nating producer goods, no? So pwede nating sabihin na poultry, no? Yung live chicken, di ba? Yun ay producer goods, no? Yung flour, no? Yung harina na ginagamit do sa pang fry sa kanya, no? Yung oil, cooking oil, okay? Cooking oil. And no other ingredients that may be crucial in cooking or providing a fried chicken per se, no? So, kung titingnan natin tong mga ito, no, itong poultry, flour, and cooking oil, no? Pwede rin kasi itong maging mga consumer goods eh, di ba? So, these are directly used naman by people in some other instances, no? So, dito lang sa particular instance na to, na yung consumer goods and services, okay? Pwede rin silang maging producer goods and services. So, ano pa mga pwede nating masabi na kung minsan itong mga materials na to ay consumer goods, kung minsan ito ay producer goods. So, isang magandang halimbawa dito ay yung, let's say, pickup truck, no? Yung pickup truck, okay, paano siya magiging consumer goods, no, sa context. So, itong pickup truck na to, no, is bought, no, by families or by individuals so that they can do road trips, no, because that is their want, diba? That's used to satisfy their want. So, in that way, diba, isa siyang consumer good. Okay? So, paano naman siya nagiging producer goods? Yung exact same truck na ito, no, kung gamitin ito ng, let's say, ng isang engineer or ng isang contractor para haul or para kumuha ng construction materials, pwede natin siya ma-classify, di ba, as a producer goods, no? So, ano pang pwede nating example? Let's say, laptop na lang para mas relatable din. Yung laptop, pwede siyang ma-classify as consumer goods, no? Dun sa context na bibili tayo ng laptop na may let's say high specs, no, kasi yun yung gusto natin, no? Gusto nating mag-game, no? So bibili tayo ng high performance na laptop. Paano naman siya magiging producer good, no? Magiging producer good siya kung ginamit natin yung laptop na ito para makapag-produce ng another product. Let's say, no, nag-edit tayo ng ano diyan, ng floor plan, di ba? So nagiging instrumento siya para makagawa tayo ng iba pang goods or iba pang services, no? So, yun ang halimbawa natin kung paano nagiging, kumbaga, nag-iiba yung definition ng isang produkto depende sa konteksto, no? Depende kung paano siya gamitin. Okay? So, paminsan-minsan, pwede siya maging consumer good, pero pwede rin siya maging producer good. No? Wala yatang produkto, no, na consumer good na hindi rin pwedeng gawing producer good. Kasi even fried chicken, no, can be a producer good. No? Paano siya magiging producer good? Edi ilalagyan ko ng sauce, no? Gagawin ko siyang sweet and sour chicken. Diba? So, kumbaga, ah hindi pa siya yung final product eh, no? At walang magiging final product dito kasi pwede mo siyang i-transform into one form, no, to the other. Kasi yung definition lang naman, yung producer goods daw, ginagamit para makagawa ng iba pang consumer goods. Okay? Or makagawa ng ibang consumer services. No? Tandaan natin, hindi ito limited sa goods. No? Pwede rin itong services. Okay? So, another na pag-uusapan natin dito, no, ay yung necessities and luxuries. No? So, ito matagal na siguro nating naririnig ito, no, nung high school pa tayo, topic na ito, no? Itong walang kamatayang necessity and luxury, no? So, necessities are those products or services that are required to support human life and activities that will be purchased in somewhat the same quantity even though the price varies considerably. Ibig sabihin yung necessities, no matter how expensive, no, dahil kailangan mo siya para mabuhay, kailangan mo para masuportahan, no, yung iyong daily activities, no, bibilin at bibilin mo siya, no. So, yun ang tatawagin nating necessities sa topic na to. Luxuries naman, on the other hand, no, ito yung mga bibilin mo pagkatapos mong nasatisfy yung mga necessities mo. So, after mong nabili lahat ng needs mo, no, lahat ng bibilin mo afterwards ay classified na as luxuries. No? So, luxuries are those products or services that are desired by humans and will be purchased if money is available after the required necessities have been obtained. Okay? Pero dito man sa usapang necessities and luxuries na to, ay depende pa rin sa konteksto. So, siguro kung i-redefine natin yung necessity, no? Sa Tagalog, ito yung tinatawag nating pangangailangan. Yung luxury naman, yung tinatawag nating luho, no? Kung titingnan natin yung layunin, no, ng necessity or yung kanyang definition, no? Ito yung direktang kailangan para mabuhay, no, or makapagtrabaho or kumita, no? Yung luxury naman, siguro masabi natin na ito ay para sa dagdag na lang na comfort or dagdag na social status, no, or dagdag na or I mean para sa recreation na lang kumbaga, no? Ano ang epekto kapag nawala yung mga necessities, no, yung mga pangailangan? The effect is, okay, our daily lives will be paralyzed, okay, or our daily work will be paralyzed without necessities. Whereas, no, or where, on the other hand, yung luxury, if it is lost, okay, somehow we will be disappointed, okay, but life goes on, di ba? Since it is just a luxury, okay? And ang kaya ang sinasabi ko ay ang pagiging necessity or luxury ng isang bagay ay nakadepende talaga sa kailangan mo sa araw-araw, no? At kung para saan mo ito gagamitin, kaya nga sabi ko subjective siya, no? Kasi yung itinuturing na luho para sa isang tao, no, ay pwedeng maging direktang pangangailangan para sa ibang tao, no? Saan ito nakadepende? Okay, masabi natin na siguro depende ito sa konteksto, no, sa paggamit. It also depends on the culture, okay, on the income, no, on or yung the profession. Isang napakagandang halimbawa nito, one good example for this particular topic of shifting necessities and luxuries is our culture being Filipino, okay? As Filipinos, okay, one staple food that we cannot live without, okay, I would dare say that we cannot live without it, is rice, okay? Rice, on the other hand, is a cultural thing, okay? Um, we are just used to it, okay? But it doesn't necessarily mean that if it is a necessity for us, it is also a necessity for other cultures. For example, for Americans, okay, they don't really eat, or they don't really, well, they do eat, but they don't need it every day. Okay? They can live without rice. Okay? On the other hand, us Filipinos, okay, I think we would not be able to survive long without rice, okay? Because we are used to it, because it is already in our culture that we eat rice every day. Okay? Um, aside aside the on the culture concept, okay, we also have yung what we call um probably let's have it as yung dun sa profession, okay? For example, in owning a laptop, okay? Yung laptop kasi pwedeng high-end yan, pwedeng yung average use lang, okay? When it is used for, let's say, casual gaming or social media, a high spec laptop, okay, is a luxury. Okay, because what would be considered a necessity? Just a basic functioning personal computer. Okay, that's your necessity. It is a luxury if it exceeds the minimum specification set by the software. Okay, but okay, when we talk of context, okay, for example, you are a structural engineer or you are a software developer. Of course, okay, that high spec laptop will be an absolute necessity for you to work with, for you to function, for you to perform your duty, your obligations, okay, your job. Okay. Um, Also, for example, in purchasing a pickup truck, okay? So, di pa tayo naka-move on do sa laptop tsaka pickup truck kanina. So, for example, if you're purchasing a pickup truck, if you're just using it, as a form of social status, okay? Or let's say panggala lang sa mall, for leisure, travel, okay? We'll call it a luxury, right? But if it is a tool that we use for everyday usage for our business, let's say for our construction, okay, we use it for hauling construction materials or delivering stocks, no, or picking up things, no, from one hardware, okay, to the job site, then it becomes a necessity, right? So, well, I'm sure you already understand what I mean, no, but by necessities and luxuries, like uh, this is highly subjective, okay? Ang sabi nga 'di ba, ang line daw, no, the line which separates necessity from luxury is fluid, okay? It is always changing depending on certain factors, okay? Economically kasi, a necessity is a good whose demand remains stable regardless of income changes, okay? Sabi nga natin yung kanin, kahit magmahal pa ang bigas, kahit maging 150 pa ang kilo niyan, 200, bibili tayo niyan, no? Because it is a necessity for us. Okay? While in luxury, sees demand rise as income grows. Okay? So, for example, I mean, ang ibig sabihin nito, kung madami tayong pera, yung mga luxury na bibili natin. Okay? However, in practice, okay, whether an item is essential or not, depends heavily on, yun nga sinabi ko, apat, no? Yung context, culture, income, and profession. Okay? So, yun ang pakatandaan natin pagdating sa necessities and luxuries. Okay? So, isa pang maganda palang example is yung cellphone. Diba? Dati, ang cellphone ay isang luxury. No? But now, I think it has already become a necessity along with internet. Okay? Well, you can function, okay, but you cannot perform your daily tasks with ease. Okay? So, that's the reason why it becomes a necessity already. Internet, yan, mga hindi naman dating mga necessity yan. Cellphone, okay? Let's say, electricity, okay? Dati hindi naman kailangan yan, pero ngayon kailangan natin, di ba? It has become a necessity. So, lahat ng kailangan, ayun, pwede natin tawaging necessity. And yun nga, sa paglipas ng panahon, pwedeng ibang mga luxuries maging necessities or yung ibang necessities maging luxuries. So, yun lang naman for necessities and luxury. We also talk about the law of supply and demand. Okay? Dali lang maintindihan ito, no? Yung law of supply and demand. Dati pa, ina-explain na rin sa atin ito. Okay? So, pagdating sa law of supply and demand, yung demand, no, is the quantity of a certain commodity that is bought at a certain price at a given place and time. It is the quantity of a product that buyers are willing to purchase at various prices. We see on the left, okay, what we call as the demand curve, okay, which shows the quantity of a product that will be demanded at different prices. So this perspective is somehow based on the buyer's perspective. Okay, if we are to look at this graph, okay, y-axis being the price, x-axis being the supply, okay, or the demanded quantity is the x-axis. We can see here, no, at that as the demanded quantity grows, okay, observe this, no? As the demanded quantity grows, okay, the pricing here, no, it gets lower and lower, no? So, is this correct, no? At some point, yes, it is, no, because we are on the buyer's perspective, no? Remember, the more that you buy, the more that you want a discount on it, right? The more that you want a wholesale price on it, okay? So, this law of demand, okay, as I mentioned, or as I am repeatedly stating, is based on the buyer's perspective. Okay? And the buyer's perspective is that the many and the more I buy, no, the more I must have lower prices because I buy a lot. Okay? We can observe this behavior, of course, when we're buying in public markets. Okay, so when we buy a lot, we expect that we can have tawad or we can have discounts. Okay, so that's the concept also of wholesale price. Okay, so hindi ito mali, no? This is not wrong. This is correct because it is showing the demand curve. Mamaya, we will see or we will discuss the supply curve, okay, which would be the next one. Okay, but before we proceed to the demand curve, okay, let us talk about first, no, the elasticity of demand. Okay, what is the elasticity of demand? Okay, the elasticity of demand refers to the degree to which demand responds to a change in an economic factor. Price is the most common economic factor used when determining elasticity. Other factors include income level and substitute availability. Elasticity measures how demand shifts when economic factors change. When demand remains constant regardless of economic changes, a good or service is called inelastic. Conversely, let us rephrase that. A good or service is called inelastic. Conversely, when demand changes for a good or service in relation to economic changes, it is known as elastic. So let's simplify this elasticity of demand. So when we talk of elasticity of demand, okay, this is a measure of how sensitive, okay, of how sensitive kumbaga kung gaano kasensitibo, no, yung dami ng gustong bumili. Okay? How sensitive the number of buyers will be, okay, for a certain product, okay, even if it changes pricing, okay. So in strength of materials, right, when something is elastic, okay, it functions like a garter, okay. So it somehow in Filipino, it explains if kung gaano ka kunat or kung gaano ka baliktaran, 'di ba? Yung isang reaction ng mga mamimili sa pagtaas sa pagbaba ng presyo. Okay? Siguro para mas madali, no? Pag sinabi nating elastic yung isang produkto, no? When we say that a product is elastic, we mean, okay, that when there's a change in this particular product, okay, there it will also lead, okay, to a specific shift in the demand. Ayan pala, nasa pangalawa pala, no? Meaning, when something raises pricing, okay, the demand is affected. For example, when product A raises its price, okay, its demand is affected because of the raise in price. Then what happens doon sa demand ng product A? Napupunta siya sa ibang produkto. Yun yung tinatawag nating substitutes. Okay? So for example, okay, let's take two restaurants as our example. For example, when Jollibee, no, raises its price, okay, and based on observation, okay, the number of buyers or the number or the rate at which the product of Jollibee, no, is demanded decreased. So kunyari nabawasan sila ng customer dahil sa pagtataas nila ng presyo. Masasabi natin na yung produkto, no, ng Jollibee ay elastic. Okay? Because nagbago yung kanyang presyo, there was a change in its price, and okay, with the change in price is the shift in demand. Nagbago din yung demand. Okay? So, saan pumunta yung mga tao nun? No? Doon sa kanilang mga kakompetensya, no? Probably, let's say, Chowking, no? The customers went there because they did not increase their price, or no, some other restaurants that offer the same services. But if Jollibee here, no, retains the same number of customers even if they have raised their price, then the products offered by Jollibee are called inelastic. Why? Okay? Because the demand remained constant regardless of the change in pricing. Okay? So there are goods that are highly inelastic and there are goods which are highly elastic. One example is like what I've been mentioning to you, rice. Now, rice is what? Is it an elastic or inelastic good? Okay. Okay, so it is an inelastic good. As I mentioned, no matter how expensive it is, okay, I think, okay, in my opinion, we would still be purchasing it because we are used to it, okay? But of course, that was not how rice became our staple food, right? Rice became our staple food because it was cheap, no? It was a dirty carbohydrate, no? It is filling, no? But it's not nutritious, as I mentioned, okay? Um, which would be an example of an elastic food, okay? Let's say, um, for example, no, an example of an elastic good is, uh, let's say the brand of sardines, okay, or the brand of, well, anything that is canned. No? For example, 555 and Youngstown, let's say, no, or any other sardines. Is it true that when something, no, raises its price, no, you find another, but same in the type, like let's say if it is sardines, you find another type of canned goods that are sardines, no? For example, imbes na 555, bibili ka na lang ng Youngstown, okay? Or interchangeable, no? Siguro sa cellphone, hindi siya magandang example kasi inelastic siya in some sense. Why? Um, for example, yung mga products ng Apple, no matter how expensive they are, people buy them because the quality or along with the quality, of course, the social standing, no, of those who use Apple products, no, are there already. No? It's already in the culture that when someone uses Apple products, no, they somehow belong, no, to let's say a middle class or high class societies, no, or whatever our perspective on that. No? But you get what I mean, right? So, let's say clothing. Okay, clothing is also an example, but of course, everything I say is highly subjective. No? For example, if there is an increase in the price of, let's say, Uniqlo, no, we find substitute goods. Okay, but also there are customers, there are consumers, which even if Uniqlo, no, has its price uh, increased, no, some will still be retained, no, some will still buy Uniqlo, no. So that's what we mean by the price elasticity of demand. Okay, so how do we compute that, no? Anyway, we have elastic good there, but let me just paste out the inelastic good here. Okay, when something is inelastic, as I mentioned, they are usually necessities, okay, without acceptable substitutes. Okay, so the most common goods with inelastic demand are utilities. This is correct, no? Electricity. Okay? There's no known substitute for electricity, no? Aside, of course, from the solar electricity, solar powered electricity, which of course will also make you invest a large amount of money before you can use them. Okay. So prescription drugs, there's our example of inelastic goods. Although we have um, generic drugs, right? Generic branded medicines. Okay, but even if they're generic, they're very very expensive as well. Okay, and tobacco products and other sin taxes or sinful goods like I mean by sinful goods I mean those that are covered by the sin tax law. Okay, this will include, of course, alcoholic drinks, yeah, tobacco products, vape products are usually inelastic goods because no matter what the pricing of these products are, no matter how the government raises pricing, people would still patronize this type of products because somehow they're, well, let's say they're addicted to it, they're used to it, okay? Or in the case of prescription drugs, of course they need it, okay? And there's no other substitute, okay? So if you do not buy it, of course you die or your condition gets worse, right? So that is how we define elasticity and inelasticity of demand, okay? So We also have what we call the cross elasticity of demand. Okay? When we say cross elasticity of demand, okay, this is a concept that quantifies how quickly the amount of one commodity is desired in response to the changes in the price of another. So this is what I was also mentioning earlier, but on the perspective of the substitute goods. Okay, if a change in the price of the main product, okay, is presented to consumers, okay, they will shift to another substitute. And that is what we call the cross elasticity of demand. When the price of another product changes, its demand also changes, right? It decreases. Then the decrease in the demand of that product will mean the increase on the demand of its substitute. Okay. So as I mentioned, cross elasticity of demand can be used to describe complementary or replacement commodities. As buyers look for alternatives to the more expensive item, the demand for a substitute good may rise when the price of a primary good rises. Okay? And lastly, we have what we call the advertising elasticity of demand. From the term itself, advertising, this is the market sensitivity to changes in advertising saturation is gauged by its advertising elasticity of demand. It is the ability of a marketing effort to bring in additional sales serves as a gauge of its elasticity. So this is particularly explained by how products often resort to very creative commercials. Okay, why do they need these very creative commercials? Because it creates a lasting impression on the consumers, no, on the users. And if it creates a lasting impression, then more or less they will get interested to it, and of course, they will buy it to try it. Okay, so from the term itself, advertising, it is how successful a marketing campaign is. Okay? But of course, in here, okay, when we speak of marketing efforts, advertising efforts, I can dare say, that publicity, whether good or bad, will bring in um factors, or will be factors in the purchase of a product, let's say, no? Um, Oftentimes, these publicity stunts, okay, lead to an even higher rate of purchase, no, by consumers. Okay, but of course, this is not usually. I mean, this is not always the case. Okay? There are products which have made very bad publicity and have affected their status in the market. No, so I would not of course mention these products. No, but you can search, no, for these products that um, well, one was very recent, no, a while ago. I think that would be a type of medicine, no, for uh, for lack of sleep, no. But I would not be mentioning the product, of course. So positive advertising elasticity means that an uptick, or a successful advertisement leads to an increase in demand for the goods or services advertised. A successful advertising campaign will lead to a positive shift in demand for a good. Okay? So that's self-explanatory. And how do we compute, the price elasticity of demand? Okay? So it's very simple, no? So the price elasticity of demand is computed, okay, by taking the absolute value of the percent change in quantity over the percent change in price. So for example, a cigarette which costs 100 pesos has its price increased to 180 pesos. Okay. And if the packs sold in a month is from 800 to 300, okay, then the percent change in uh, saan ba yun? The percent change in quantity would now be 62.5%. Ito na. 62.5%. Okay? So, this is 300 divided by 800, ano? I'm sorry, that's 800 divided by 300. Ano? Yeah, that's correct. 300 divided by 800. Okay, so that's 62, that's 0.375, no? But the change is 62.5% per in complementarily, no? So if it is percent change in price, okay? Okay, so again, let us solve this one, no? So saan galing yung 62.5%, okay? So to get the percent change in let's say, doon muna tayo sa quantity, okay? So the price or the quantity purchased, okay, now, which is let's say 300 minus 800 over the original quantity, which is 800, okay? So there will be a negative 62.5% change, no, in the number of packs sold in a month, okay? So you can compute that. That's negative 62.5%. Whereas, okay, for the pricing part, okay, that would be 180 minus 100 divided by 100, okay, and that will give you 80%, okay. So again, that's 180, which is the current price minus the old price divided by the old price. This would give you 80%, okay. Since it's the absolute value, no, you can just input 62.5 divided by 80 here, okay, which would give you 0.78. And what's the indicator, no? If the quotient is greater than or equal to 1, then the demand is considered to be elastic. But if it is considered or if it is calculated to be less than 1, then the demand is considered inelastic. Okay? So what does this mean? Okay? So this means, okay, that cigarettes, in this case, would still be classified under inelastic good. Okay? Let's repeat what inelastic is. Inelastic goods are, even if there are changes in the pricing, okay, the demand stays the same. Consumers still purchase these products even if they have an increase in their pricing. Okay? So that's what we mean by inelastic. So if you compute it and somehow it is equal to 1 or greater than 1, then, okay, the demand or the good is considered to be an elastic good. Okay? That's how we just compute this one. It's very, very simple. Okay? Now, we have focused on the demand in that part of the discussion. Okay? Let us now go to the supply side. Okay? Remember earlier the demand curve. Okay? That is on the buyer's perspective. Okay? Then, on the contrary, of course, we can expect that the supply curve is on the seller's perspective. Okay? Let us first define supply. Supply is the quantity of a product that sellers are willing to sell at various prices. The quantity of a product that a business is willing to sell depends on its price. It refers to the total amount of a product or service a supplier offers to consumers. So as I mentioned, this supply curve shows the quantity of apples that farmers would be willing to sell at different prices regardless of demand. So if we're talking about supply curve, um we would not be concerned on the demand side. We're just only concerned on the supply side. Okay? And what does the supply curve indicate? Okay? That the seller is willing to supply a huge number of products, okay, provided that they are paid for a greater amount. Okay? As I mentioned, the demand side, okay, explains that buyers here, no, are demanding lower prices, okay, in exchange for buying a huge number of products, okay. While the supply curve in here, indicates that the seller is not willing to sell, no, if they're just sold at a lower price. Kung babaratin lang, hindi siya magbebenta ng ganito karami, no? So anong gusto niya? Magbebenta lang ako ng ganito kadami. I will only sell these products, okay, I will only sell this much products if you offer me, okay, high prices for them. Okay, so that is what the supply curve shows us. Okay, that okay. Let's focus on the graph. Okay, the x axis in here shows the supply. Okay, that the sellers are willing to sell, while the y-axis represents the price. So if you can see, I will sell you 3,500 apples if you buy them for 90 centavos. That's what this means. Okay? If you only buy 500, okay, I would accept a pricing of 30 centavos. Okay? So the lower the supplied goods, okay, the lower price I would agree on. Okay, because of course that would depend on the hassle, on the packaging, on the whatever, no. Whereas here, if you can observe, okay, the buyer side, I will buy 3,500 pieces of apples, provided that you provide them at 10 centavos. Okay, so that's how we can explain this supply curve and the demand curve. Okay, so pretty confusing, I know, but we have to just take into consideration that the demand curve is from buyer side, the supply curve is for the seller side. Okay, so of course, no, that there will be a negotiation between these buyers and sellers. Okay, that they arrive no with a common ground. Okay, and when they arrive at a common ground, that is what we call the equilibrium price. Okay, this is the point at which the two curves intersect. Okay, at this point, the buyer's demand for apples and the seller's supply of apples is in equilibrium, and they're willing to sell it, okay, at a agreed upon price, which is called the equilibrium price. This scenario creates what we call a perfect competition. Okay, when there's perfect competition, okay, there's a healthy environment for all. Okay, the buyer gets what he wants, the seller, okay, receives what he deserves, what he also wants, of course. Okay, so of course there will be other types of competition which we will be explaining in detail. Okay, so let's go to the types of competition. Okay, the first type of competition is what we call, as I mentioned, perfect competition. This exists when there are many consumers buying a standardized products from numerous small businesses. Because there is no seller that is big enough or influential enough, okay, so that he affects the prices, sellers and buyers accept the going price. This is usually the case, okay, in markets, in wet markets, when there are many buyers and there are many sellers. And for example, when there's a vendor which insists on raising his price, even though a price is standardized, of course, aside from being reported to authorities, then he would risk having his goods not bought. And if these are perishable goods, then mapapanish yung kanyang mga products dahil hindi mo bibenta, right? And of course, since his capital is spent on these goods, and if they are not sold, then his capital gets stuck, okay, in those form. Okay? It cannot be converted into cash. Okay? So it is very important, okay, that in this definition we see that there is a word standardized. Okay, when something is standardized, okay, there there is a what we call quality control on it. Okay, along with quality control, there is the suggested pricing. That is why we have the Department of Trade and Industry, okay, which sets a standard or suggested retail price. Okay, whether that be in rice, okay, in sa bigas, whether that be in canned goods, in coffee, no, in everything, no, that is necessary or that is commonly purchased in markets, okay, markets and groceries. Um, Of course, this would include price of fish like tilapia, galonggong, bangus, price of poultry, chicken, duck, whatever, price of livestock like pork, beef, no, and other types of meat. Okay, so the DTI is the agency concerned, okay, with the regulation of this factors in the market. Okay, also there we should take note, okay, that the definition is no seller is big enough. This would mean or influential enough. That would mean that all sellers here, okay, have a common standing. Okay, no one is rich enough to, let's say, control the supply of the whole market. Okay, parang sila ay pantay-pantay. No? So, pag nagtaas nga ng presyo yung isa, hindi mabibili yung kanya. Pupunta sila sa ibang seller. Okay? And that will be detrimental, of course, to the person who raises his price. Okay? Even if you say that, oh, this brand or these products I sell are of high quality, no? Then actually in a market, okay, the people will buy or people will opt to buy for the cheaper good, okay, provided it supplies them with the same taste, no, the same experience that this expensive product offers. Okay? Wala naman siguro nagbebenta sa market ng Wagyu beef compared to sa regular beef, di ba? So, these specialized products are often offered at convenience stores or let's say groceries, no, that are, let's say, ang tawag dito, member exclusive, right? Like Landers and SNR. Okay? You cannot purchase Wagyu beef at a regular market. No? So, that's what we mean by perfect competition. Okay? So, one also good example of perfect competition is the agricultural commodities, no? Like rice or wet farming, like wet as in the one used to produce flour, no? So why is it a perfect example? Okay, so thousands of small farmers, okay, produce virtually identical crops, no? And when these are sold to the market, okay, no individual farmer can control the market price. Okay, these are all sold at the outgoing market rate or the suggested market rate. Okay, but of course, it's an entirely different discussion if these farmers do not directly sell their products to the market when there's a middleman. Okay, we'll be talking about that later on. Okay, so let's go to the second one. Okay, the first being perfect competition. The second is what we call monopoly. Okay, so a monopoly here. Okay, we have played this game, I reckon, no, from our childhood. Okay, a monopoly is a market structure where a single seller or producer assumes a dominant position in an industry or a sector. Monopoly is the opposite of perfect competition, where there's only one seller who can use its advantage to create artificial scarcities, fix prices, and provide low quality products. Okay, this is of course the opposite of perfect competition. Okay, in here there is no standardized product. Okay, I mean it's not automatic that the product is standard. The vendor can just select some product, offer it even if it's low quality, and since he is the only seller of that product, okay, then buyers have no choice but to buy that product. Okay, so monopoly here, okay, is of course an illegal type of market. Okay, but okay, there are some legal monopolies which we will be explaining also. Let us first go and define a type of monopoly. Okay? A perfect monopoly exists when a unique product or service is available from a single vendor and that vendor can prevent the entry of all others into the market. Okay, it is there are many scenarios which a vendor can prevent the entry of all others into the market. Okay, number one, of course, is influence. Okay, if this vendor is highly influential, okay, and holds extreme power in that particular field. Okay, of course, the second one would be if it is an invention. Okay, if it's an invention, of course, the creator would not be willing to let others copy his products and sell them to the market. Okay, that's why we have patent laws, okay, and commercial laws. That is what we call legal monopoly. No, and we have what we call the two types of, or two categories, I mean, of legal monopoly. Okay? This is coined legal because this not this I mean this exists in the real world, okay, and they are sanctioned, no? They are allowed by the government. Okay, the first category of legal monopoly is what we call the natural monopoly. What does this include? Okay, this includes public utilities such as electricity and gas suppliers. Such enterprises require huge investments, and it would be very inefficient to duplicate the products that they provide. So mostly public utilities, okay, electricity. So um, do we have a choice, right? Like, do can we select a type of electric cooperative? No. So in our experience, of course, there we have no choice but to subscribe to the local electric supplier, to the local electric provider, okay? Or risk buying solar products, solar powered products, okay? Investing in a solar powered system, okay? But of course, as I mentioned, that would be highly expensive when compared to subscribing to an electric provider, electric cooperative, okay? And this is not naturally, or this is legal, okay? Because as mentioned, okay, there would be no one willing to fund, there would be no one willing to shed out money to create another local, or to create another electric company. Okay? Because it is very, very expensive to do so. Okay? And the permits that you would need. And of course, you would need government regulation. You would need a law. Okay? You would need some senator and some congressman create a law for you. Okay? Because these types of businesses require extreme regulation, no, from the government. Okay? Another example that is not provided for in here would be expressways. Okay, the North Luzon Expressway, let's say, and South Luzon Expressway. These ventures, okay, would require a huge amount of funding, a huge investment for you to produce a competitive, or let's say a competition with these mega companies. Okay, of course, expressways, in my opinion, are also public utilities. No, they are uh, they are there, okay, to ease life. Okay, that is what utilities are, right? So it would be very inefficient for you to duplicate their company, okay, and their infrastructure. Okay, the second one, of course, would be the legal monopoly. Okay, well, natural monopoly is also a legal monopoly. The second one is legal monopoly per se because, as what I've mentioned, it arises when a company receives a patent, okay, a commercial right, giving it exclusive use of an invented product or processes. Patents are issued for a limited time, generally 20 years. Okay? It may be up to a lifetime plus, let's say, 25 years or plus 50 years, depending on the product. Okay, of course, you will be learning that in your technopreneurship subject. No? It will be taught by the Office of Innovation, Business and Development. Okay, um, commercial law and patent laws are very, very extensive. Okay, um, so those are the two categories of legal monopolies: natural and legal monopoly. Okay, so as I mentioned, okay, monopoly is usually illegal, no? And one group, okay, that monopolizes a product or hoards product supplies and sells them at a particularly higher price would be called a cartel. Okay, we have already probably heard cartel, no, in different scenarios. Okay, there are cartels when it comes to illegal substances. Okay, there are cartels in here in the Philippines in terms of onions, sibuyas, garlic, even the chili, no? Siling labuyo. Nagkaroon na ng cartel dyan. Okay? So, this is a group, okay, which hoards, no, particular products, and then by hoarding particular products, they create a temporary scarcity, no, an artificial scarcity. When we say artificial scarcity, the demand gets high because the supply is limited. Okay? Paunti-unti yung nire-release nilang supply para tumaas yung presyo. Okay? So, this is very illegal. Now, price fixing is an agreement among competitors to raise, lower, maintain, or stabilize prices or price level. Okay? Price freeze is a mechanism by the government to ensure that people can still purchase goods amidst natural calamities or disasters. I think you have heard this once or twice in the pandemic, okay, when a price freeze was implemented um, to necessities, no, like meat, okay, rice, no, also alcohol that time. But along with the price freeze is the restriction, okay, in the quantity sold. So it may be limited na dalawang ganito lang kada tao, no? Para nga makabili lahat, 'di ba? That is what we mean by price freeze. Okay? Anyway, so much for monopoly. Let us now go to monopolistic competition. Okay? So this is like an oxymoron, right? Kasi monopoly pero competition, but it exists. Okay? So, monopolistic competition is where many sellers offer differentiated products, products that differ slightly but serve similar purposes. By making consumers aware of product differences, sellers exert some control over price, but not entirely. Okay? Monopolistic competition exists between a monopoly and perfect competition and combines elements of each and includes companies with similar but not identical product offerings. So, a classic example that I would tell you would be chicken, fried chicken. Okay. So, for fried chicken, okay, this is a common product, right? That it becomes a competition. Okay? But how does it become a monopoly? Okay. For example, for fried chicken, we have chowking. Okay. How do how does Chowking make fried chicken their own? Okay. So they brand it as Chinese style. They have their own taglines. Okay. I'm not really familiar with one, but I think Kim Chu is an endorser of Chowking. No? Chinese style, sarap, parang ganun. No? Um, next one would be, let's say, McDonald's. Okay. So for McDonald's, it is US, no? Ano na nga ba yung ano nila? Mac, something like that. No? An entirely different branding, okay? But different, the same product, fried chicken. No? Jollibee. Okay, Jollibee is Crispylicious, I think. Pinoy style. Okay? Crispylicious, Juicylicious, no? Chicken Joy. Even the Chicken Joy term, no, is a patented term. No? Chicken Joy is for Jollibee only. Okay? Um, what else? So many, right? So many that you can think of. KFC. Okay? This is by also US, finger licking good. Okay. Um, what else? Mang Inasal, of course. Okay? Our favorite. Mang Inasal is here, Pinoy. Okay, but their branding is barbecued chicken, no, plus only rice. Okay, so you would seem, no, that these are competition in nature, right? They're all selling fried chicken. Okay, but at the same time, they are monopolies because you cannot buy Chinese style fried chicken from McDo. Okay, you cannot buy Crispylicious Chicken Joy from KFC. Okay, so you get what I mean. No, this is a more simple approach. Okay, another example. Okay, let us observe coffee shops. Okay, like Starbucks or some local cafe that we can observe there. So many sellers compete for the same customers, but their products are not identical in this scenario. Okay, what do they compete on? They compete on branding. Sa chicken, 'di ba? Merong branding na pang Pinoy, pang masa, merong branding na pang social, 'di ba? Like Kenny Rogers or Max's, no? May branding na pang kultura, Pilipino, Amerikano, no? Um, and some others, no? May mga iba pang flavor diyan. Flavor 'yan, location, and ambience, okay? Which gives them a slight control over their own pricing. Pero slight lang, no? Hindi sila pwedeng magtaas ng todo kasi of course, sabi ko nga, competition pa rin ito, no? Baka magtaas si Chinese style kasi siya lang naman ang Chinese style. Hindi naman ganun, no? They also need to factor in, no, na yung mga kalaban pa rin nila itong mga McDo and all. Okay? So, I mentioned fried chicken because it's the perfect example, no, for monopolistic competition. Dami dyan, di ba? May Chicken Star pa. Chicken Star, Kenny Rogers, yun nga, Max's, ano ba isa? Chokes to go, no? So, although, di ba, ano yun, pare-pares na manok, no? Pero iba-ibang branding, iba-ibang setting din, iba-ibang pakulo sa bawat restaurant. Okay? So, that explains monopolistic competition. Let's go to the next one. No? The next one is a term that we commonly hear, no? Okay? I think before in the elections we have heard this. Oligarchs, no? What do we mean by oligarchs or oligopoly, no? When we say oligarchs, these are very rich people, no? When we say oligopoly, okay, this means few sellers. Okay? In an oligopolistic market, each seller supplies a large portion of all the products sold in the marketplace. In addition, because the cost of starting a business in an oligopolistic industry is usually high, the number of firms entering it is low. Okay? But it's not that high that it becomes a monopoly. Kanina. In this case, mahal siya pero kaya na ng mga mayaman na pumasok sa mga businesses na to, no? So, the economic and legal concern is that in an oligopoly, it can block new entrants to the market. Okay? It can slow innovation and increase prices. Okay? 'Di ba parang monopoly yung kanyang datingan, no? Papunta na siya doon, no? But not entirely. Okay? So, ano bang example nitong tawag dito? Oligopoly, no? So, siguro magandang example dito yung mga mobile network. Okay? 'Di ba dati meron lang dalawa, no? Tatlo. 'Di ba merong Sun Cellular, Globe, and Smart, no? And then nangyari dumating si Dito, 'di ba? So kung monopoly yung mga mobile network, hindi makakapasok si Dito, 'di ba? Kaso yun nakapasok siya. Dito by Converge, Dennis Uy, I think, no? So napasok naman siya kaso mayaman nang nakakapasok, no? Another example is yung mga sasakyan, no? Yung mga car brands like Toyota, Mitsubishi, whatever, no? Iba-ibang car brands. So, hindi ka makakapasok dyan kung hindi ka oligarch, kung hindi ka mayaman, kung hindi ka elite, no? Sila lang nakakapagpuhunan ng ganyang kalaki, no? Siguro, pwede ka rin natin sabihin yung airlines. Cebu Pacific, Philippine Airlines, yan, malalaking puhunan ng kailangan, no? So, There is a handful of large companies, no, which control the vast majority of the market. Yun ang characteristic ng oligopoly. And because there are so few players, their pricing and strategy, no, along with their decisions, directly depend on one another. Ito yung, kumbaga, nagpapakiramdaman sila. No? Pero hindi nila binababa yung presyo ng bawat isa. Okay? Hindi sila nagko-compete sa pricing. Doon kasi sa perfect competition, dahil maraming buyer, maraming buyer, marami ding seller, anong nangyayari, pagandahan sila ng produkto. No? So, kaya sabi, standardize yung product, di ba? Pag itong mga oligopoly, monopoly, no, itong mga market na dihado ang buyer, no, dito kasi sa mga market na to, wala lang pa kayong mga seller kasi mabebenta naman yung mga product nila. No? Pag naghanap sila sa ibang company, ganun din naman quality, low quality rin. No? So, walang choice yung buyer. Talo yung buyer sa mga ganitong systems. Panalo lang siya dun sa perfect competition. No? Kasi hindi mo bibilin kapag hindi quality yung produkto. No? So ano ngayon yung gagawin ng mga seller, no? Pagalingan sila, padamihan sila ng offering. Oh, dito makakamura ka ganyan, no? For the same price, you can experience, no, itong gantong product, mga ganon, no? So, yun lang ang kaibahan, no? Anyway, yun ang oligopoly, no? Simple lang naman siya. Basta yung mga mayaman, no, yan yung mga nakaka-enter at nagiging mga sellers din. Punta naman tayo doon sa kabaliktaran ng monopoly. No? Kabaliktaran yan ay yung tinatawag na monopsony. Pag poly, buyer. Pag Sony, PSONY, no? Yan ay, uh, pag monopoly, seller pala. Pag monopsony, buyer. No? Pag, pag Sony, buyer. Pag poly, uh, seller. Okay? Monopoly, isang seller. Monopsony, isang buyer. Okay? A monopsony is a market condition in which there's only one buyer. Because there's only one buyer for a good or service, the buyer sets the demand and therefore controls the price. Monopsonies, like monopolies, are inefficient to a free market. No? Talo na naman dito ang kumbaga yung nagbebenta ng kanilang product naman, yung talo. No? Where supply and demand regulate prices to be fair for consumers. So, sa paanong parang to, baka nahirapan kayo mag-isip kung ano yung mga monopsony. Sabi ko kanina, di ba, yung mga farmer sa agricultural products. Usually, perfect competition yun. No? Sa paanong paraan? Kung nadadala nila yung kanilang mga produkto mismo sa market. Okay? Pag ganun kasi sila mismo nagbebenta, sila nag-set ng price according sa standard pricing. Pero, no, ang realidad is, itong mga farmer na to, dahil walang access sa mga equipment na pang-process, pang-transport nitong kanilang produkto, umaasa sila sa tinatawag nating middleman. Itong middleman na to, siya yung perfect example ng monopsony. Okay, yan ang sasabihin ng middleman. Itong bigas, bilhin ko lang to at 13 pesos, 13 pesos. Okay? Pag maganda, 13 pesos. Pag pangit, 9 pesos. Okay? Yung mga farmer ngayon, pupunta ba sila sa ibang mga seller, sa may ibang mga buyer, no? Well, kung makapunta sa ibang buyer in the first place, no, hindi sila magtatanong doon hindi sila magbebenta sa ibang mga buyer. Ibebenta na nila mismo sa market, 'di ba? In the first place, kung meron silang kakayahan, no, na magbenta sa market, no? Wala nga eh. No, wala silang kakayahan to do so, wala silang pera, wala silang makina, walang sakyan. So, ano ngayon ang gagawin nila? Wala silang magagawa, no? Bebenta na lang nila. Okay? Kesa mapanis, mangitim yung bigas, no? Bukbukin yung rice, magka-mold yung rice, yung bigas, no? So, yun ang nangyari. Middleman ay example ng monopsony, no? So, as I mentioned, detrimental pa rin ito sa may hirap, no? So, ang madami pang klase ng monopsony, no? Let's say, mas example, sa mga remote islands, yan. Yung mga bumibili ng mga isda nila, mackerel, yan. So, kung hindi bibilin yan nitong mga middleman, mapapanis sila. no? Lalo na kung banye-banyera yan, alam namang ituyo nila yung ano, di ba? O mas ano pa yun, laborious pa yun, no? Kung wala kang pang manpower, no choice ka but to sell at their stipulated price, no? At their demanded price, kumbaga. Okay? So, very, very, ano, di ba? Very agarabyado, no? Yung mga nagbebenta naman dito, no? So, yun ang example, no? In far-flung areas, no? Poor areas, remote areas, uso to, no? Yung uh, middleman, monopsony. Okay? So, next, we have duopsony. Yung duopsony naman, from the term duo, dalawa. No? Pero itong dalawa na to, hindi naman sila nagpapaligsahan. No? So, itong dalawa na to, ganun din, parang mga middleman. Pero nag-uusap yan. Okay? A duopsony is an economic condition in which there are only two large buyers for a specific product or service. Combined, these two buyers determine market demand, giving them considerably influential bargaining power, assuming that they are outnumbered by firms vying to sell to them. Okay? So sa Amerika, no, or rather sa Australia, no, ito yung uh, example natin na yung grocery chains, no, na Coles and Woolworths, no. Sila yung dalawa yung nagko-control ng lahat ng agos ng grocery goods. No. Dito siguro sa Pinas wala tayong ganitong duopsony, no. Pero sa I think airlines meron din yung mga nagsusupply sa airlines ng eroplano, no. Dalawa lang yun eh. I think Boeing yung isa, tapos yung isa, not sure. Pero dalawa lang yung gumagawa ng eroplano. No? Um, duopsony in the case of ano yun, of aircrafts. No? Uh, yun nga, yung Airbus tsaka Boeing. No? Sila yung dalawang nagpo-provide lang ng aircraft sa mga iba-ibang airlines. Okay? So, ayun, even if, di ba, oligopoly yung airlines, nauutakan pa rin sila dahil dalawa lang yung nagbebenta ng eroplano eh, no? So, wala sila magagawa. No? Okay. So, anyway, so mahirap magbigay ng duopson eh kasi hindi siya common, no? Na discover na kasi ano nga, nag-uusap pa rin tong dalawa, no? Kung ano yung presyo. Okay? Of course, kung may oligopoly, meron ding oligopsony. No? Ito naman, yung mga very rich lang yung buyers. Okay? An oligopsony is a market for a product or service which is dominated by a few large buyers. The concentration of demand in just a few parties gives each substantial power over the sellers and can effectively keep the prices down. Okay? So, anyway, medyo mahirap din itong example, no? Oligopsony. Okay? But, siguro, pwede nating sabihin na pwede siya maging example do sa fried chicken ulit, no? Kung meron lang mga kaunting giant fast food chains, no? At outnumbered sila nung kumbaga nagpo-produce ng poultry, kumbaga may say sila, no? Kung gaano karaming bibili nila, anong presyo ang pagbili nila, no? Lalo na kung sabi ko nga perishable goods. Pag usually itong mga illegal cases like monopoly, duopoly, monopsony, duopsony, oligopoly. Ito yung mga, usually sa mga perishable goods na walang magawa yung tao kung hindi ibenta na lang doon sa bumibili, no? Or, sa kabaliktad naman, yung nagbebenta, no? Kumbaga, kailangan nila ng malala, no? Kape, di ba? Nescafe. Yun yung pinakamalaking buyer, no, ng coffee beans. Cacao, chocolate, no? Nestle, yan. Um, Hershey's. Yan, yung mga brand na bumibili ng kakao, di ba? And yung sa libro naman, yung Big Five na tinatawag, no, doon sa publishing industry naman yun. Okay? Anyway, so much for the types of market. Okay? Punta naman tayo sa another concept in economics, yung tinatawag nating law of diminishing marginal returns. No? Okay, pag sinabing law of diminishing marginal returns, okay, this is a theory, okay, a theory in economics where, no, let's read, where that predicts that after some optimal level of capacity is reached, adding an additional factor of production will actually result in smaller increases in output. Okay? So, sa madaling sabi, no, yung law of diminishing marginal returns, okay, sinasabi nito na kapag patuloy mong dinadagdagan, no, yung isang variable input, let's say worker, no, or sa ating case, let's say the number of steel bars, no, sa isang fixed input, there will come a time that the output, no, of these products, no, that you put, okay, will result, okay, in a lower contribution. Okay, kumbaga, dinadagdagan mo siya pero yung strength niya konti lang ang dinadagdag, no? Kumbaga sayang lang yung nilalagay mo, no? So, siguro ang realistic example nito, kunyari mag-hire tayo ng madaming cooks, no, madaming chefs. Okay? Pero yung kusina napakaliit, no? So, sa kada dagdag mo ng chef, no, hindi naman nadadagdagan yung efficiency nila, di ba? Kung maliit ang kusina nila, ang nangyayari lang dyan, nagka-crowd, no? So, let's say, kunyari, 5 chef, nakakapagluto sila ng, let's say, 25 plates, no? Pag ba dinagdagan mo ng additional 5, magiging 50 ba yun? 50 plates, no? You can't say, no? Actually, lalo na kung yung place mo nga maliit, diba? So, yun lang ang ibig sabihin natin dito, no? Merong lang perfect na point, no, na yun ba yung pinaka-maximum, pinaka na maximum pa, na yun yung point na kumbaga sulit na sulit yung lahat ng input mo. Kasi yung output niya, no, na-utilize ng fully, no, itong mga in-input mo. Pero, beyond that, no, kahit mag-input ka pa, yung resulting output is smaller when compared, no, doon sa bago mo na-reach yung optimal. Okay? So, yun ang what we mean by law of diminishing marginal returns. As I mentioned, very demonstrable ito, no, sa reinforced concrete. No? Merong point na yung concrete natin, no, pag kailangan niya ng reinforcement, dumadagdag talaga yung strength niya. Pero pag na-reach na niya yung kanyang required number of reinforcement at dinagdagan mo pa siya, no, ayun, nasasayang na kasi hindi na niya may utilize yung maximum niyang strength eh. Naabot mo na kasi. So, kahit dagdagan mo pa, hindi madadagdagan yung maximum strength niya. No, ano na lang nangyayari? Bumibigat na lang yung materials. No? Tumataas na lang yung kanyang cost. Pero in terms of efficiency, in terms of strength, hindi na siya dumadagdag. Yun lang yung what we mean by law of diminishing marginal returns. Okay? And that is part 1, no, of the discussion for basic economic concepts. This will be followed by the discussion on the present economy studies, the 2 rules in conducting present economy studies, and the situations where present economy studies are involved. Okay, that will be on a separate recording. So if you don't have any questions, okay, or rather, if you have any questions, of course, don't hesitate to approach us or to message me on MS Teams. Okay, have a great day ahead, and goodbye.